Hello and welcome to the RPG Rundown. I'm Seth.
And I'm Jeff. From dungeons to deep space, we've got the systems and the stories for your table. Well, hello there. Welcome back to the RPG Rundown. In episode 40, our critical review series continues as we are going to sketch out how artwork and design affect tabletop RPGs. So, as creators and designers ourselves, this is one of our favorite review points, and it really commonly plays a role in bringing certain systems or supplements to our attention. When you see something that just has really good design, something you like, something you kind of vibe with, it makes you want to check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And what each of us as players or DMs
Hmm.
like about artwork or layout is indeed subjective and can vary from system to system or even between different books within a given system or supplements like third party supplements. But before a single die hits the table, the artwork has already told us what kind of world we're stepping into. First impressions, tone, and even how usable a system is, like how easy it is to read the rules or the pages of a book, depends greatly on artwork and design. So, without any further ado, why don't we go ahead and dive in?
Sure. So the goal on today's podcast is going to be to talk about artwork and design, which is the A in our critical review system. The A in critical is looking at artwork and design. And so what we really want to identify here is how that affects a tabletop game, because we may not think that, the artwork on the packaging or the artwork in the rule book or in the monster guide or, we may not think that actually plays a role, but it really does. If you think about, the artwork in vastly different types of games, you'll realize that, just looking at the artwork itself makes you feel differently about the game, and it's going to influence how you play the game, how you interact with the game. And so, just some of the artwork and design we're going to be talking about today is going to be the visual identity. So, think of this as like the illustrations, the cover art, the iconography, then, layout and readability. Is it, something that has a modern, what I would call, like a really modern using like sans serif clean fonts, or are we going more D&D style where we have some archaic black letter style typography? How's that going to make you feel? Then, graphic design systems, color palettes, fonts, spacing, then physical production, right? If you're holding the book in your hands, is it hardcover? Is it soft cover? How's the paper? How's the print? Is it black and white? Is it color, right?
Hmm.
Because all of these play a big role. And then getting into, the digital side, is it a PDF? Is it images, right? What all do you have access to on that side of things? So we have a lot we kind of want to go through here, and we'll try to move through them pretty quickly because we can both be pretty big nerds about artwork and design. But it really does play a really big role in the systems that we're checking out.
Yeah, it really does, and I am sure many of our listeners are
Mhm.
much like us in that what we see first often determines whether we are even interested in
Mhm.
an RPG system. Are we interested in D&D, like in a specific D&D supplement, like if it's
Mhm.
Eberron or something else? Are we interested in the system itself? Like Tales from the Loop or uh, Edge of the Empire, Star Wars, kind of
Mhm.
thing.
Oh yeah.
The graphics, the art is usually one of the first things that draws us in. So that
Oh
first
yeah.
impression is usually, cover art or the kind of core aesthetic
Mhm.
of a system. So, cover art obviously communicates the genre. Is it sci-fi? Is it fantasy? Is it modern? Is it superheroes? It tone. Is it really dark? Is it bright and colorful? Is it, um, you know, black and white even sometimes? And then like expectations, like what do we as players and DMs expect from this system or from the stories that we are going to create using this system? Are we going to have this dark, gritty narrative? Are we going to have a fun, adventure romp through the forest? are we going to be playing in some sort of like neon noir cyberpunk? What is it?
Hmm. Right.
And so, that role of art in that first impression is so important.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I mean, like in a world of um, crowdfunding. I was trying to think of the word. In a
Mhm.
world of
Oh yeah.
crowdfunding, uh, first impressions is almost everything,
Oh yeah.
and art
Yeah.
plays a
So you're
huge
telling
role in
me
that.
you're telling me that old adage, "Don't judge a book by its cover," isn't true?
Oh no, it's 100. Like
No, you
it
100%
can
judge the
be,
book by its cover.
but
Yeah.
for RPGs, a lot of times we
Yeah.
judge it by the cover first, and then
Yes.
we judge it by what's inside.
Mhm. I agree.
Now, as it applies to people, no, we should never do that.
Right. Fair. Fair. Fair.
We should
But when looking
always,
at a
it
RPG
doesn't
system.
matter what they look like, what they're wearing, what
Mhm.
iconography they have on the outside. We should always get to know them before we judge them.
Fair enough.
Um, but no, so
Yeah.
the role of art, though, also needs consistency, and it,
Mhm.
visual consistency across the supplement, across the
Mhm.
artwork is important. If you're looking through an art, a core rule book for something, you don't want unless they create layout that does it very well. You don't
Mhm.
want to have like black and white sketches randomly thrown in with full painted mural artwork
Mhm.
unless you
Sure.
have
Yeah.
unless you have done that in very specific instances.
Right.
Dagger Heart is kind of one of those, right? Where in each of the different character, what are they called? Lineages, races, kin, I don't know.
Ancestries.
Ancestries, thank you.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
have sketches of a whole bunch of different variations of what
You're right.
each
Yes.
one could
Yeah.
look like, but it's not spread out throughout the whole book randomly.
Mhm. Right.
Um,
It makes sense where it is.
right. So having that consistency or having the consistency of what the art looks like,
Mhm.
you don't want to have very cartoony caricature art in one
Mhm.
section and then gritty realism in another one.
Right.
Um,
It really just kind of feels out of place when you end up getting like mixed kind of genres and styles and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
so you want the cover to represent the game well.
Hmm.
The cover,
Absolutely.
the character art, the scenery, all of that creates the core aesthetic to the game that you're choosing to play. And we'll have some
Hmm.
examples of that in just a little bit when we get to the
Oh yeah.
physical products, because you know things like Daggerheart or Tales from the Loop. Like Tales from the Loop was one that I backed on Kickstarter, not only because of the cool, interesting setting, but
Hmm.
100% what did it for me was the art, because the artist was
Hmm.
someone I had already followed. He already had these big, cool images that they ended up using for the game. And so I was
Hmm.
like, yes, I want a role play game set in the world of those pictures.
Right. Yes.
um, but others like D&D, right? I started playing in 3.5. Like the very
Hmm.
first game I ever played was D&D 3.5. And then the artwork immediately shifted in D&D Next or D&D 4, which was
Hmm.
a very similar but different style. It was like a lot of the same
Okay.
stuff, but it was like a different style.
Yeah.
And then we get 5e, and again, same same content, but very different
Hmm.
in style and like more of a modern, a little bit brighter, more colorful than 4e. And so yeah, it makes a big difference. So
Right. Oh yeah.
but what about like what does that do like when going through the book? Like not just
Yeah.
like the big sweeping pieces of art that we get in the advertisements or the
Hmm.
cover or whatever.
Sure. Yeah. So once we get to like the what I would call like the interior art, right? When you open up the book, you're looking at the interior pages. You start to see, illustrations, and in that you're going to see style, and you're going to, and I think all of this art goes to actually reinforce the lore and the theme and really the emotional tone. And so as you're flipping through, you're going to see things like character art, and it's going to have, maybe characters that you can play, or it's going to have, NPCs or, other adversaries, things of that sort. You're going to see environmental art where you're going to see scale. Like think of a RPG like Humblewood, right? You have these character art of like these little mouse creatures, but then everything else around them is like huge, kind of showing how small you are. Like just even things like that play a pretty large role in understanding. You're going to see things like action scenes, and a lot of times that's going to show you, okay, what kind of fighting and combat are we looking at here? Is there magic? Is there superpowers? Is there none of that? And it's just a straight up, fist. Do we have guns? Do we have weapons? Right? Like your action scenes kind of show a lot of those different things, but when you actually get down and you look at the style of the art, like say you open up the book and you start flipping through and you find the first few pages that have art on them, that's going to actually tell you a lot about the game. Like think about if and just two games popping off my head, like in my head right now, is I was just looking at Mass the New Generation, which if you look at the artwork looks very Teen Titans style, and that is vastly different than if you look at the art for, say Deathbringer, a new TTRPG coming
Uh,
out.
yeah,
uh,
for sure.
the art's vastly different, and when you look at them, it immediately gives you a feel and a sensation of what that game's going to be about, right? I'm assuming, and I haven't played either of these games, but I'm assuming, just looking at the artwork, that Mass the New Generation is going to be very, almost like kind of comical. It's going to be Teen Titan superhero. You're going to run in and save the day with your cape billowing behind you. Right. And then I'm looking at Deathbringer, and I'm assuming that's going to be a dungeon crawl, and it is going to be gritty, and there's going to be death everywhere, and it's going to be very combat focused. It's going to be, very grindy. And just looking at the
Yeah.
artwork,
Big
I'm assuming these things,
consequences. Yeah.
yes. Yeah, and these are things I'm assuming 100% from the artwork. I've only looked at pictures. I have not read a thing or watched a video about either of those games.
Yeah.
This is just my immediate thoughts looking at the artwork, and I could be wrong, but I'm willing to bet I'm not. That's about how those games are going to be. And so, yeah, the interior art, the illustrations, and I'm talking kind of specifically about like the imagery here. I think you're going to get into like the layout and things of that sort. So I won't go too far into that, but the imagery is going to tell you a lot about the game.
Yeah, absolutely. It helps define, the world as well, right?
Hmm.
It's
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
does this one have, does this medieval world have guns? Does it not have guns?
Yes.
What do the dragons look like? Because
Mhm.
TTRPGs are so descriptive and narrative focused, it helps us be able to describe them, to be able to see that
Yeah.
stuff. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, like talking about, like you said, the layout and readability or the art and design as like a gameplay tool, layout absolutely becomes a component of the experience, right? Whether it's
Mhm.
live while playing, for the players or the DM, but essentially, you know, where how the columns in the book are structured, where there is a call out or a sidebar, or maybe there's a section that's like, for DM's eyes only, or say this to your players, right?
Mhm.
That's one of the things games like Daggerheart has in their beginning intro adventures is like, read this to your players to describe this intro scene kind of thing, to help DMs understand what it is that you trying to convey from the stuff that's in the book. Um, and a good layout can also help it be easier to understand. It's that looking at a page just chocked full of words and tables can absolutely kind of like slow down how you comprehend the page, how you take in all that information. And so being able to look at it, maybe there's a bunch of tables, but there's no distinguishing between the rows and the columns.
Right.
Maybe they put it in and there's different colors between the rows and different colors between the columns and borders. And maybe that helps you. Or maybe it's too busy for you. You don't like that. So these design choices that designers make absolutely can affect your enjoyment of reading through the rules, of being able to find rules in the middle of a session, and being
Hmm.
able to find that call out that had that one very important detail you need. It's something that
Hmm.
can help the table flow better. It helps with, is this a hard RPG system to learn? Like, what's the
Hmm.
learning curve? It can also help, with player immersion. Like, is it something where reading the book helps the players, the DMs, get immersed into the world? Or is it something that is just clinical and descriptive? Um,
Right.
for some, that might be better, but
Hmm.
but
Right.
it can absolutely do it. Just like I said, clear iconography, like we talked about earlier, can help
Hmm.
speed up combat. If you know when there's this symbol, it's referring to a combat encounter. Or when you're looking at a stat block for an NPC and you know that this symbol represents an attack and this symbol represents a skill check and this
Right.
symbol represents a narrative element or something. Those clear icons can really help. Also, just art in general being an inspiration for choices or role play. Maybe you
Right.
saw a piece of art that had um, somebody jumping over a like a ravine or something. You're like, oh, can I jump? Can I try to jump over something?
Right. Yeah. Can I do that?
Yeah. And so
Oh
that
yeah.
would be a instance of that. Um,
Sure.
but what about the next section there?
Yeah. Yeah. So, kind of going right off of that, you're kind of talking about layout, readability. Like those are super important. I know we play tested a beta version of a game, and I'm blanking on the version. And at that point, the rules list was just basically a Word document, and it wasn't that enjoyable to read, and I'm used to reading. We play test a lot of games. I'm used to reading rules, but getting it in that layout, just Word document, like not just very cut and dry. I remember it was, I don't know, it was very bland to read. And then I think that I think I remember what game it
There's
is, and if
draw
it's the game I'm
steel.
thinking of, we had Draw Still, and so now the rules are actually out, and I think they actually have them looking a little bit better. But anyway, just
It's
going
still
off that,
pretty word heavy though. It's still a
yeah, yeah,
pretty uh, script heavy book, but there is more
right,
art for
yes.
sure.
I think there's more art now, but yeah, it was one of those. It was a tough read, but yeah, kind of spinning off of that. I would say the typography and the graphic language, like this plays a huge role. And so okay, on my stream, one of the things I do is I actually do graphic design on stream a lot. And if you come over and you just jump into a graphic design stream, most of what you're going to see me doing is looking for fonts like that. That is, I would say, 60% of graphic design, unless you're working for a brand that has predetermined fonts. But otherwise, you're going to spend a lot of time looking for fonts. And there's a reason, because fonts have such impact on the feel, like the look, the feel, the tone of whatever it is you're designing. Right. And so I'm often, I do designs for like different streamers and things like that. And so really, like, even when I'm looking for a font like that, it's like, are we going cute and bubbly, or are we going archaic and black letter, or are we going modern sans serif? Right. I say all that because whenever you open up the book and, like, you've looked at the pictures and you see the layout, you're going to actually kind of zoom in on the text, and the text can have immersion in it. If, let's say, you're playing a medieval fantasy game and you're seeing like active, what I would call like black letter, gothic, sans style fonts in front of you, right? Where you actually have this typography, and in that typography, you have some different colors coming out. I think of the way that like D&D often uses, the first letter of the page will be like, I believe it's like a red letter, and it's like a black letter style. they'll often have like things like that, and just the font that D&D uses kind of immerses you in it just a little bit. It makes it feel like, oh, this isn't just a Word document. This is a ancient manuscript of some sort. Like, obviously, it's not. It's a rule book, but it makes you feel just a little bit more like it is an ancient manuscript, and it keeps you immersed. And so, whenever you're looking at different fonts, the font's going to play a huge role in just how you feel about it. So, going back to my previous examples, Mass the New Generation is going to probably, if I'm willing to bet, is going to be a very clean sans serif font, sort of like the Nike logo or the Apple logo. Probably a font similar to that. Maybe the headings are going to be a bold, bubbly style that matches that comic book vibe. Whereas when I get over to Deathbringer, I'm pretty sure that's going to be black letter, gothic, bold, grunge, maybe a little bit, and that is going to affect how you feel about the game, just from the fonts that they're using and the typography they're using. And in that, there's going to probably be a certain font that they use for different hierarchy, right? One heading is going to have this style of font. The subheading is going to have this style. Then you're going to have this font that's used for the body text, and this font that's used for like the italicized, really bring your attention to this little point, right? All that's going to be there, and again, they're going to bring icons into that, and the icons should reinforce how they want it to feel. And so I go back to like branding. So my specialty is designing brands. And so whenever you're branding, you're never just making a pretty logo. If you make a pretty logo, you're an awful designer. Okay. Ultimately, your goal is to make a logo that attracts the target audience, or you want to build a visual brand that attracts the target audience of whoever you're designing for. And so really that's kind of the same thing that should be happening when I'm designing a brand. Every piece of design that I'm creating should be reinforcing the goals of the business that I'm building for. And in the same way, when you have a game like a TTRPG, every piece of design, every font, every heading, every subheading should be reinforcing the look and feel and tone of that game. And just, and ultimately we're going to spend most of our time in the words of the game, right? We're reading the rules and verifying this and reading this, campaign log and things of that sort. And so the typography plays such a huge role in just the way that you feel about the game. So yeah, I'm a huge typography nerd. I
Hmm.
probably know more fonts than I should,
No,
but
absolutely. And I mean, like, one of the ways that Jeff and I met was actually through graphic design, right? Like,
mhm,
he
yeah,
joined a community that I was kind of helping with, or leading, and he was like, "Hey, I'm a graphic designer," and I know it's kind of early in your graphic design days,
yeah.
but that's how absolutely how he got, um, kind of connected to start with.
Oh
Is
yeah.
that Jeff messaged me, and so, which check your message by the way for a second,
Oh,
there.
sweet.
Um, but yeah, one of the things too, besides typography, is visual aids, right? So visual cues, maps, diagrams, tables, those things all play a huge part in how players and DMs, take the information that we get in the rules from these systems and how we bring them to the table.
Mm,
Battle maps, for example, are going to be that, you know, hopefully easy to understand, whether it's a grid or it's a um, hex base or it's like a freeform map. It kind of just makes it easier to understand when you can see a map for a lot of people. Some people don't like looking at a map, they want full 3D terrain. And then other people don't want to see
mm,
anything on the table, they just want to imagine it. But maps can absolutely help with that, or world maps then can help them imagine it. Or if you have a world map that looks like it's written on parchment, that could, or if you are a very creative DM and you actually create a map on what looks like parchment and hand it to your players at the table, that's very immersive, right?
mhm,
And so then if you give them, they have their character sheets or charts or different visual aids, all of these things support gameplay, and they can absolutely be something that's created at the design development level. And when that's the case, that consistency, that unifying, uh, theme across different mediums really can help with being in the game and the immersion in the storytelling. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, I know Jeff and I both love maps and we love map
Mhm.
making tools.
Oh yeah.
What's the most recent one you've used, Jeff?
A map making tool.
Yeah,
Yeah, Incarnate. I pretty much just use Incarnate for everything. Actually,
nice.
I've gotten into using Incarnate and like Canva. I've used Canva for a few things, like bringing maps
Oh, okay.
over and extracting. 'Cause there's a lot of cool like tools in Canva now that can, extract the foreground from the background, and then you can move it. Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah,
mainly Incarnate still.
that's awesome. I have done a lot, most of my maps in Incarnate, but I keep going back. There's one on Steam called Canvas of Kings, I think,
Okay, I downloaded that
and
one, the
I have
free
the
version.
demo, yes, but
Yeah, yeah,
the next time it goes on sale, I'm probably gonna buy it because they've gotten some
it's
really good
solid.
updates.
Yeah.
I've
Okay.
also done there's a 3D one
Mhm.
called Alchemy that is incredible.
Dungeon Alchemist.
Dungeon Alchemist, yes, excuse me, not
Yes,
Alchemy.
yes, I have that one as well.
Um, Dungeon Alchemist.
They've done some really cool updates with that one too.
They have, but it's all focused around 3D. Although
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
can technically make it 2D, it's really shines in 3D. So
Yeah, yeah, it's great in 3D. The cool thing, that I liked about it is at the time I was using Dungeon Alchemist the most, I was using Foundry, and so you could export stuff specifically for Foundry, and
yeah,
it's really cool. You should have like, lights that flicker and they automatically put in your fog of war and view, and so, if there's a light source, then it reveals the area. Anyway, really cool stuff, but yeah, definitely shines in 3D.
yeah, absolutely. Um, but you know what? Besides digital, and we'll talk a little bit about digital again in a second. But we
Mhm.
want to shift over and let's have a little visual aid of our own for this episode. So
Yeah.
if you are listening to the podcast, you can watch the episode on Spotify or YouTube. Definitely come check us
Mhm.
out on YouTube. Give us a like and subscribe. We really appreciate it. It's at the RPG Rundown LTN. And we're going to show just some examples of design and art in the physical form, right? So I've got some books to show you kind of different things here. The ones that I have got in the past. I'm going to start with the book that I first bought before, like I had played just a little bit of D&D, and then I was like, you know what, this book came out and I'm going to buy it. And that is the Star Wars role-playing game Edge of the Empire, right? Um the it was a nice hardbound book
Mhm.
and had just a lot of really good stuff. There was like this read this first kind of thing. But the layout and design is pretty good. It's got really good design. Fantasy Flight Games were the ones that did it. Lots of art. Okay, lots of art getting you into the kind of immersion of Star Wars, right? Which again, most of us have seen Star Wars. We've seen Star Wars
Mhm.
cartoons and movies and TV shows at this point in our lives. And so it's very easy to know and connect this artwork to
Oh, yeah.
what we have seen and the world that we know about Star Wars,
Oh, yeah.
right? But I, in my opinion, it was very well laid out, being
Mhm.
able to understand things. But that was the first one that I ever got, and so again, having that as an example was great. Um, Another one that I got pretty early on was Tales from the Loop, and this was one that I bought uh, solely because of the artwork. I backed it on
Oh,
Kickstarter
yeah.
because Tales from the Loop was this, it is a 80s alternate sci-fi, right? So, 80s
Yeah.
alternate history sci-fi. And
Yeah.
there was an artist named Simon Stollenhag. He had already had all this really cool artwork out that was themed around this. And this happened to come out just at the perfect time. He, like, Free League Publishing announced they were doing this as a Kickstarter, as an RPG, and then literally shortly after that, the first season of Stranger Things came out, and it was like literally this: a group of kids
Yeah.
in the 80s, uh,
Hmm.
you know, going on an adventure, and it's just incredible. And so the artwork in here was very much that kind of 80s aesthetic, but you did
Right.
have, like, lots of kind of like sketches, and then you had these big sweeping painted pictures which were all done by the same artist. So that's the consistency, right? From Simon Stollenhag.
Hmm.
um and he has full art books. He had already been selling these full art books of all this art of what the Tales from the Loop, which that's the loop. If you don't know, it's like a big, like, super collider, literally the loop kind of thing.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and so it was just this incredible aesthetic, which it's set in Sweden.
Hmm.
So,
Oh, cool. Okay.
which Free League Publishing is in Sweden. So,
Makes sense. Okay.
but those are both well made hardback books. Um, but not everything is a hardback, So this is one that I just got recently from a single author, Alexander Johnson, called Woodlander, and it's a good quality heavy paper stock, but it is a soft cover book. And so, there's this one has a lot of information because it was a single book kind of thing, but it had great black and white art. And this book is very much a red wall, anthropomorphic woodland creatures. Um, and so, but like I said, it is lots of rules with very little art. Uh, it it could be overwhelming for somebody to
Hmm.
have that
Right.
much text. Um, but then also too, this, as we've talked about before on the show, Mech Warrior and BattleTech is one of my favorite IPs, favorite franchises, and so this sci-fi book uh, has lots of great art, but I would say that the layout sometimes is maybe not the best for understanding, right? Um,
Hmm.
like this, without knowing it, you're just seeing these stats here, but that would be technically what, like, a character sheet, right? But it's not defined that this is the record sheet. This is just like stats on a page. And,
Right. Yeah.
you don't necessarily know what to do with all these hexagons and boxes and cues on the lines and stuff like that. Um, and so, and then also too, the columns and stuff sometimes are a little bit uh hard to keep track of, but it's still good enough that it doesn't quite take away from the play experience. And then, like I said, there's lots of good art in there as well. But that's like book design. But what about product design?
Yeah. So, w- yeah, there's like that realm of, physical product, but a lot of games, you're going to end up probably just with digital.
Well,
And
true. Although I do have here also Daggerheart. Okay.
yes.
Sorry, I do have the few more physical pieces here.
Okay. Yeah. More physical. Okay. Go for
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Then
So
I'll get into
Daggerheart,
digital in a minute.
yeah, Daggerheart, and this was packaged as a set, right? Where it's the book,
Mhm.
and it's got, like, really nice. It has the two different sacred strings to save things. But then
Hmm.
there's also the box with the cards.
Cards are
Um,
great.
this was
Hmm.
great product design for sure.
Yes, I agree.
And then when you look at the book, obviously it's Critical Role, and we know that they have a great art style, right? Lots of
Hmm.
bright colors, um, lots of big sweeping art pieces.
Hmm.
So, um, and I try to put it back together here.
Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah, no, the Daggerheart set is it. The Daggerheart set's great. I personally, I love the cards. I will say I'm more of a digital fanboy typically, but
Yeah,
I will say I do like to have the physical. But I find that if you give me a digital rule book, I will reference that 10 out of 10 times over the physical rule book.
yeah. And then you've got like Forbidden Lands, which was another
Mhm.
one I backed after Tales from the Loop, and by Free League Publishing. And these ended up coming as like super nice fake leather tomes, essentially.
Oh, that's cool.
Very
Yeah.
good quality woodstock, but all of the art, this is again an element of the style, right? It's all black and white, very old
Mhm.
school D&D kind of artwork here. We've got like great, it all, the whole thing looks like pencil sketches, right? It looks like
Yep.
somebody could have written this whole
What
book.
game was this?
This is Forbidden Lands, which
Oh, gotcha.
is
Okay.
a fantasy. Um, it's kind of an old school fantasy RPG,
Yeah.
trolls. Okay. Um, very sandbox in how it plays. So,
That's
yeah.
very cool.
So, like I said, it was very high quality. But then the last one that I got to show off, because this was my only hobby hobby efforts over the last several months, was the
Hmm.
Cosmere role playing starter box. And,
Oh yeah.
came with some initiative cards, came with dice, and then these super nice, you know, glossy finish booklets with incredible art. Obviously, Brandon Sanderson has incredible
Hmm.
vision and is able to describe things in great detail. And Brotherwise Games did a great job of bringing it to life. This is the Stormlight starter set. So, but yes, let's talk about digital for a second, because there's one platform that you're going to get to, Alchemy, that is
Yes.
just both of ours probably
Oh
favorite
yeah.
visually.
Yeah, no, and for specifically and entirely 100% the artwork and design.
Yeah, yeah,
Alchemy is my favorite VTT simply because it looks so good.
yeah.
And the really cool thing with Alchemy, and just kind of from a completely digital point, is there's a marketplace on Alchemy that has, I don't know how many, but it has a ton of different games. Like I have it pulled up here and just looking at the game systems. Um,
I'm pulling it up
I
too.
mean,
So,
yeah, so that I'm looking like there's Outgun, Degenesis, Pirate Borg, City of Mist, just absolute ton. And the cool thing that I like about Alchemy, and I swear at some point we should get sponsored by Alchemy because we talk about them so much. Um,
I'm okay with
the
it.
cool thing, yeah, yeah, I would definitely be okay with that. So the cool thing that I love about Alchemy is whatever system, and we've seen this, we're currently playtesting City of Mist. Stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
Um, and but like whenever you choose a different system, it updates the whole UI or the user interface of Alchemy for the DM and for all the players to match the artwork, the style, the colors, the fonts, the typography of whatever game you're playing. And to me, it's just so immersive. It feels so cool. And I didn't just, well, I was going to talk about digital, but I didn't want to just hype on Alchemy. But Alchemy really, like when we're talking about the artwork and design, like Alchemy takes what's normally in a rule book and it puts it in front of everyone at the table
Hmm.
so that you can actually see and feel. And really, like when you play a game like D&D on Alchemy and then change over and play a game like City of Mist, like we're playing, you can immediately feel the difference in the game you're playing, the tone of the game you're playing, and all of that. And so I don't know. I think alchemy is really good for getting that out there. But talking just kind of specifically about digital products for a moment, um, when we're looking at the artwork and design of a digital product, what are you actually getting with it? And so most digital products, you're going to get obviously the rule book. You're probably going to get some sort of character creation type guide, some sort of monster. Sometimes it's all in one PDF. Um, and you're going to get a lot of things like that. Now, personally, my favorite games are always the one that come with a bunch of files, and especially the games that come with like image files of maybe the different races or the different monsters. Or and for me, I just love when it comes with tokens. Digital tokens that work
Yeah.
in like VTTs is just like one of the top tier things a game can do when they sell you a digital product. And I realize, you can't use tokens for, they're not going to tell you like every token for every monster they have. But, when the starter adventure has tokens with it, I don't know. I think that is awesome. Um, I forget exactly where I was going to go with like the digital side of things. But
That's
like
okay. I'm
I can
showing it
hype on
off
it.
right now as we're going through it, like
Yeah. Yeah.
showing off
So
Age of the
like,
Loop or Tales from the Loop and City of Mist and
oh, yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
like that. So
Yeah, no, cool. And so there's so much in like the digital side of things. Now, for me personally, like when I'm on a digital, and this is a good example, Staggerheart. I have the digital rule book and I have the physical rule book. And when I'm at my table, I will always access the digital rule book. And so I for one really like whenever the digital feels just as immersive as the physical. And so like when you're looking at it, I like it to have the same typography, maybe the same cream paper and the same serif fonts and things like that. That way it still feels immersive even when you have it pulled up on your laptop at the
yeah.
table. But yeah, so I like digital, and top tier of digital for me is things on Alchemy. And there are systems on Alchemy that have what is called like Alchemy Enhanced, which
Hmm.
is where it has all the fancy stuff when you're playing. It makes your table feel like the game you're playing. But yeah, no, I mean, from there is a little bit of a difference from like your digital side versus your physical side. Like some games that come out with a really nice physical setup and then a Word document for the digital. I
Uh,
like when you have both that
yeah.
are immersive.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to get away from just having a PDF that looks like
Hmm.
your same layout of your book, and
Yeah.
a lot of them have that at the very least now. But
Right. Yes. Yeah. Typically they do.
having something that is immersive, like a virtual tabletop, um,
Hmm.
a lot of times can help. And alchemy
Right.
is one of our favorites, aesthetically speaking. So,
Yes. Agreed.
but Leo, let's talk a little bit, Jeff, about what are some common pitfalls or
Hmm.
negatives of how artwork
Sure.
or design could potentially affect us.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say one of the number one ways that like the artwork and stuff can negatively impact the game is usually when it's just too busy and it interferes with like comprehension. And so ultimately the goal of the product is for comprehension, right? The ultimate goal is for you to learn the game. And if the artwork and design gets in the way of learning the game or playing the game or finding things quickly, things like that, if it gets in the way of that, I think that is one of the ultimate pitfalls. And this is the same thing. This is just graphic design as a whole. Um, if your graphic design gets so fancy that it no longer communicates the message you're trying to communicate, you failed. And so that, I think that's the same thing when we're talking about artwork and design here. If it gets so fancy and so designed and so artistic that it no longer communicates what needs to be communicated, that is a pitfall. And I would say I think in most larger publishing, especially things we've seen from Free League and Magpie and the Critical Role team and things like that, like I don't haven't seen that being an issue necessarily.
Not usually. I think the
Mhm.
biggest, uh, I think probably the first thing that jumps out to me is when you've got poor contrast. Like you've got like a dark page with
Yeah.
font on it that is hard to read,
Yes.
or the font is like a couple different sizes. Like you've got headings that are one size, and then you've got other text that's another size, and then you've got side panels that are a different size. And sometimes it makes it hard to find certain rules if you're looking for rules.
Right. Yes.
Um, but yeah, I mean, like that could definitely there. I would say in a lot of RPGs today
Mhm.
that people have figured it out
Yeah, yeah,
pretty
they're
well.
pretty well designed. Yeah, and I would say one thing would be, like I don't like whenever that's like style over substance. And what I mean by that is like, oh, you wanted to fit really cool images on the page. And so you compressed everything into like a little tiny box. And it's like now everything's mushed together and it's hard to understand. It's hard to find exactly what I'm looking for. Like
Yeah.
there has to be that blend. Yes, we need the style. We already talked about that. And you need the images, you need the iconography. Like, yes, that's important, but don't sacrifice like readability and legibility,
Hmm.
on the altar of pretty, you know?
Yeah,
Uh,
or if you have columns that in order to fit artwork in makes it reading a rule a little difficult because you're like down at the bottom of this column and you have to go to the top of this
mhm.
one. And then maybe it's
Oh,
even
yeah.
a long enough rule that you got to go all the way down that and then go back up to the third column or something. Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Or on
Yeah.
another page even. Like
Right. Oh, yeah, yeah.
if they don't do
When
layout
it's
well
yes.
enough where a rule is only on one page and you're having to go between different pages, that's a
Yeah.
whether major or minor, that is a design fail in my opinion.
Right. No, no, I agree. I think, yeah, because when you're designing something like that, everything should be clearly in its, in its defined section. And so, I think with, yeah, especially in like a middle of a rule or something like that, a page break should always, it should be contained within its page. Yeah, for sure. And then I think the other pitfall I would say is just kind of like misleading art in that, and I mean that in, you know, let's say that this game is gritty, but you're using colorful graphics, or let's say this game is intended to be, a certain style, but the artwork in it portrays a different thing,
Hmm.
or one that I've never cared for is when the artwork shows something that can't actually be done in the game. And I think there was a big complaint about that in like with the D&D movie. With the movie came out and the ranger had a owl bear as a pet, and it's like, well, in D&D you can't actually have an owl bear as a pet. And like, or whenever a game shows you using a certain ability, but that ability is not actually in the game, or something of that sort. I think things like that can be a little bit annoying, and a little bit
Yeah.
of a pitfall.
No, I agree. I think
Mhm.
a lot of times art in RPGs lines up pretty well.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. Typically, these are
I
all
would say
things
it'd
that
probably be
I don't
something
see
like
done very much.
more maybe a small indie publisher that can only get
Sure.
a certain
Yeah.
kind of art.
Right.
I think we see it more often reflected in like video games. We've got this
Mhm.
amazing cover art, and then it's like 8-bit graphics.
Oh yeah. No, that is a
So,
particular annoyance of mine. Uh, or when you're like looking at a game on Steam and all you keep seeing is like the game trailers and they never show you the gameplay. And then when you look at the gameplay, you're like, oh, the
yeah,
gameplay looks like it was done on a potato.
right.
And but yeah, the gameplay trailer looks amazing. Yeah, no, I think in the TTRPG world they do all the pitfalls so far we've talked about. I think most of the newer games and stuff have worked out. I
Yeah.
haven't seen any of these pitfalls really.
No, I agree. I agree for sure.
Mhm.
Well, Jeff, I think that's a pretty good comprehensive look at artwork and
Yeah.
design.
Yeah.
Um,
I
again,
mean,
we
I
kind
think
of
so.
we kind of talk about this. This is the A in our critical review system,
Yes.
and we have a little bit of, I wouldn't say it's like a hard and fast rubric, but we kind of
Mhm.
have it defined as a, like visual identity when we're talking about, getting it. Is it readable? Is it usable?
Mhm.
Is the art consistent? And then like, what's the production quality? Is it, physical, digital? How does it come across?
Sure.
Is it
Yeah.
good quality? So, um, but yeah, you know what? I think that is going to wrap up today's episode.
Mhm.
Um, why don't you start our closeout here?
Yeah. So as we're closing out, what we would love to know, anyone here, especially watching on YouTube, is to let us know what system like grabbed your attention by its art. Like what system did you just see the artwork, maybe the cover or another piece and go, oh man, I really want to play that, or I really want to check that out. I would love for you to leave that down in the comments. I would love to go check out that art as well. And maybe if you're
Yeah.
not on YouTube, if you're listening to the podcast right now, jump over on Twitter, one of our socials, and leave us a comment there about what game kind of grabbed you with its art.
Yeah, absolutely. Or if you're old school, you can definitely send us an email at rpgrundown@gmail.com.
Yeah.
But also, we are a part of the Love Thy Nerd podcast network. So when you go to YouTube, check us out at youtube.com/at the RPG Rundown LTN. Um, if you've not heard of Love Thy Nerd, they are a podcast and video network of lots of nerd culture topics, right? And we exist because love thy nerd is that we as Christians exist to love our nerdy neighbors, and so that is what we do. Um, we love and serve them in such a way as to reflect Christ. Um, and so we will be at cons serving in, you know,
Hmm.
vendor booths, stuff like that. We
Yeah.
have lots of videos and podcasts out talking about all sorts of nerd culture stuff, whether it's wrestling, comic books, movies, video games, TTRPGs. Here we are. And we just, we have all these same interests and enjoy them as well. So we just are coming at them from our perspective here and what we enjoy. So be sure to check it out. There's links in the show notes. And we'd love for you to get connected with us. Again, leave us comments and let us know what artwork or design has caught your attention.
Hmm.
But from our table to yours, thanks for joining us on the RPG Rundown.
And until, until next time, may your rolls be epic and your stories legendary.